Pittsburgh Steelers fans, it is Monday with a capital M. Doesn't mean it's a bad Monday. It's a President's Day Monday. So today we are coming dressed as our favorite presidents. My name is Bryan Anthony Davis. As we do the Hangover, dressed as James Polk is Tony Defeo. And
my favorite president.
You're a James Polk guy? And
well, I figure
dressed as. Go ahead, Tony.
I figure anybody before 1900 is safe to talk about. He's my favorite. Woo!
And dressed as Herbert Hoover is Shannon White.
Oh, that makes me so angry.
And I am here as Ronald Reagan. But actually, in a show out during his time, so I'm wearing my Regal Beagle t-shirt, which was out during his time from Three's Company. So there we go. So happy President's Day, everybody. I'm sure you boned up on your President's Day trivia today. So I think it's great. But wow, we're going to go from presidents to general managers today as we talk about Kevin Colbert. And he talked to the media today, so there's so much to talk about there. Man, he threw out a lot of stuff, didn't he, gentlemen?
He gave us a lot to chew on, that's for sure. Just like a Rooney a few weeks ago.
You know what?
Seemed like he had more to say than in the past few years. Maybe because this is his last, combine and draft cycle, but he seemed like he had a lot to say.
Hold that thought. You know what? I hate the way this podcast started. I really do. Kind of started off blah. Let's start this again. Pittsburgh Steelers fans, my name is Bryan Anthony Davis from Behind the Steel Curtain. Along with me today on this President's Day, it's Shannon White and it's Tony Defeo. What is up, gentlemen?
I'm good. How about you guys?
Very good, folks. Wow. Seems like deja vu for some reason. But hey, happy President's Day, guys. I'm sure you've been boning up on your President's Day trivia. But more important than that, we are going to talk about general managers. And, well, just one. Well, we'll talk about future general managers, possibly. But Kevin Colbert had a lot to say. And Shannon White, I have a feeling that you're going to say that this is probably his last address. What do you think?
Yeah, that's why I think he was very talkative and informative today, because so much times it's whether it's a GM or head coach, they just give you little bits and pieces, but he was really chatty Cathy today, and maybe it's where it's his last draft cycle and combine, but I prefer it that way. So we got a little glimpse behind the steel curtain.
And Tony, so what did you think of Mr. Colbert talking to the media today?
I like some of the things he talked about. I think people are overreacting to some of the things he said, which is understandable. I guess it's a slow news time, but he certainly gave us a lot to talk about and to chew on.
Well, I tell you what, plenty to chew on, and we're going to do it. And we are going to do that courtesy of one David Schofield, as he today put out a great article, top 8 takeaways from GM Kevin Colbert's talk with the media. And so we are going to reference that for some of the big subjects that was talked about. But even bigger subject, everybody, man, on the live chat today, the guys, the girls, the ladies, the men, they are saying right now that Shannon White, they love your t-shirt, man. You're wearing a pretty cool Pittsburgh Steelers t-shirt. Is that
I
new?
like the nostalgic stuff, the stuff that looks like what we grew up with. So I was happy to find this one.
And I'm not getting much love from my t-shirt, which is, you really can't see it that well, but courtesy of Three's Company. Well, they didn't give it to me. My wife bought it. But the Regal Beagle, Santa Monica, California, established 1977. Steelers were good in 1977. They didn't win it all, but they were good, boys.
Mm-hmm. Injuries.
Yeah, man, they got beat up by injuries. They definitely really could have been in the Super Bowl that year as well, the year before, 76. So, but they gave way to the Raiders and Broncos for a year to go ahead and represent the AFC. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's talk about the big news over the weekend. And I think everybody is really celebrating this news. I think because I was away. I was at a camp this weekend. I was locked away. I got to see everything about the hiring of Brian Flores. When I saw it, I was like, wow. And I think we talked about that, how that could be a possibility, just for the fact that if any team was going to hire Brian Flores, Pittsburgh was probably a great candidate to do it, just because of the way they're set up and their need for another defensive coach there and a guy with head coaching experience. And they've done well with coaches with head coaching experience coming in. I mean, you can say what you want about Todd Haley, but Todd Haley did some good things here, and he was a head coach. They also brought in Mike Munchak. Good job. He was a head coach, and go way back to when the Steelers brought in Ron Earhart. Ron Earhart was a good offensive coordinator for this team, better than he was as a coach for, I believe, the Colts and the Giants. So, gentlemen, what was your knee-jerk reaction when you read that? I'm going to start with Tony.
Oh, I thought it was great news. I mean, the reaction to it was universally positive, which it's rare to find nowadays. I mean, there's always some stragglers, but by and large, it was a great reaction, and I think he's going to be a great asset for them. I mean, he's had so much experience already at the age of 40. He's worn so many different hats for the Patriots, and obviously head coach of the Dolphins. So, you know, the more talent you can get on that coaching staff, the better. And he's going to work well, I think, with Terrell Austin and Tomlin. Now you have two former coordinators. You have three basically defensive coordinators. You know, and of course you have the other. You can't discount the other people on that side of the ball, you know, Jerry O and people like that. So I think he's gonna be a great asset for them. And you know, it's kind of like, it kind of reminds me of having Dick LeBeau as the defensive backs coach when Dom Capers was the defensive coordinator. You know, and it's going to be that kind of it's going to be, you know, to have that much talent on a coaching staff on that side of the ball. I mean, it has to help them next year. It has to be. It can't not be beneficial.
Shannon White, is this just adding a guy for the sake of adding a guy, or do you see a really proper place for Mr. Flores here in Pittsburgh? Because I sure do.
Oh, this is a great hire. A lot of my off-season articles so far have been about finding draft value, free agency value. Well, this is coaching value. You have a guy who's has head coaching experience. Before he was a coordinator, an assistant, he was a scout, and then he worked in the scouting department. So he knows every level of personnel. And he has proven that, you know, we've talked about with Keith Butler leaving, would the Steelers be able to keep that pass rush? Well, he is excellent coaching and varieties of pass rush technique and blitz schemes. So he was a great hire all the way around. And I know you've heard different things about why he was hired and the Steelers stepping up, doing the right thing. The right thing was, you're getting a great coach who's still getting paid by the Dolphins. So you can they probably got him a little cheaper than they had any right to get him, because he should be a head coach. But what a find and what a value to get. And he's just going to make the defense that much better. He's going to want to make free agents come to Pittsburgh more than they already did, I believe.
I absolutely love this hire too as well. And I think I'm not going to say I completely called this hire, but I said that it made sense from the start, and I would love them to go ahead and take a look at it. So I'm not saying, oh, they're going to do it, because you never know what's going on and how things are going to shake out. But I am going to say this here. I don't care what state. I thought he got a raw deal, not getting called in to teams like the Houston Texans, which you thought he could have possibly gone there. They did hire Lovie Smith, who is a defensive minded coach, just like Flores was. So, you know, I love I love the fact that they brought him in. I love the fact that he's good with personnel. And not only is he good with personnel, when he was with the personnel department, Shannon, was that with the New England Patriots?
I think so, yes.
All right. You know how they do with personnel there. And when you're learning, when you're in personnel and you're helping out with Bill Belichick, whether you love the hoodie or you hate the hoodie, you better respect the fact that the guy has a resume and the guy's really fantastic. And he's going to go down in history as right next to Vince Lombardi and not too many others. In fact, I would probably think the Mount Rushmore of coaches right now could possibly be Vince Lombardi, Bill Belichick, Bill Walsh. And really, I would go ahead and say it might be a toss-up between Don Shula and Chuck Noll, and I would probably take Chuck Noll. But I'm not sure, and I could be missing some head coaches there, but that's my Mount Rushmore right now. What do you guys think?
Well, I've always been a huge Bill Walsh fan. He's one of my favorites, maybe my favorite coach of all time outside of Chuck Noll. I just have so much respect for Bill Walsh and what he was able to do in San Francisco and identifying talent. People like Dwight Clark, who he saw him. He only caught 2 passes his senior year, and that's all he needed to evaluate him. And how he found Jerry Rice. I mean, just found him while watching a game, while staying in a hotel room. So I just love Bill Walsh. So I can't argue with that list.
Shannon.
No, I agree. It's funny that Belichick comes from the Bill Parcells coaching tree, and he learned so much, but eventually I think the pupil has surpassed the teacher there. And Bill Walsh was one of the most brilliant offensive minds ever. Mike Brown was before my time, but they said he was incredible as well. But I have to stick probably with your Mount Rushmore there, because you can't really argue with any of them.
I'm not trying to be correctorson. Were you saying Paul Brown?
Yeah, Paul Brown. I said okay. Mike Brown, thinking
it's that's all in the family.
Yeah, but Paul Brown, yes.
So, gentlemen, yeah, a very good hire. And was he a linebackers coach also in New England? Tony, is that true?
I'm not sure about that.
Back. I think he was a linebackers coach before he was elevated.
Yeah, I know he started out with that. I think he was.
Now, I'm not positive. I know he has some experience with the defensive backs as well, but I think he was kind of a combo assistant defense coordinator and maybe linebackers coach already back at during that time. But I'd have to do some research.
Now, here's the question, though. If he was working on the defense in New England and they were great with pass rushing, can you really mention a lot of superstars that were linebackers? I mean, Dante Hightower was pretty good, but he's an inside linebacker. But I'm talking about pass rushers. Did he have a lot of superstars there? I don't think he did. I think he took a lot of guys like Kyle Van Noy and some other players and turned them into just fantastic players. But Kyle Van Noy isn't a name that just pops off the tongue.
Right.
Shannon? He had Chandler Jones, and who was like incredible, a superstar. And, they seen that, the payday was coming up for him, and Belichick was like, okay, we could trade him and get assortment of picks. And, that's how, because they're system driven, not superstar driven. And I think he learned that. So I think that'll help him use Wormley and Loudermilk and hopefully Tuitt, use them guys to their full potential, because he doesn't have to rely on just Hayward and TJ Watt.
Absolutely. That is fantastic. Tony, your final thoughts on this hiring?
Oh, I mean, I think it's, it's become pretty chic over the last few weeks to now Tomlin's gone from, a guy who was totally hands off and he had nothing to do with anything. Now he's a egomaniac. But I mean, this is a sign right here that he's willing to bring in other great coaches and allow them to have input. If you're going to hire a Bryan Flores, somebody who's had so much success with New England on defense. You're not going to do that if he's just going to come in here and coach the linebackers. He's going to have a great influence on that defense. So I'm thrilled with it, and I can't wait to see what kind of schemes and game plans they devise for 2022.
You know what I was thinking through this whole thing? Wonder how much Xavier Howard loves him. Does he want to? does he want to follow? Because a lot of people are thinking that could be available for a trade. So the last thing I'm going to ask, said it was the last thing, but I'm going to say the last thing again. Let me ask you this: how much of a short-term deal do you think that this is with Bryan Flores coming in? Tony?
I mean, if it's a year or two and he leaves for a head coaching job, that probably means that, or at least a coordinator job, that probably means that it was a great time here and he left the defense better off than he found it. So to me, if it's only a year or so, I'm fine with that. It's all about getting what you can out of a great resource while you can, while in the short time that you have him.
Shannon, what do you think the ceiling? How many years do you think the ceiling is on Bryan Flores here before he goes to greener pastures?
I would say 2 or 3. If they have the success I'm expecting them to, like Tony said, that means if we don't have him but for a short time, then it was very successful and he got to show what he's capable of. We had talked one time before, a few weeks ago, that he had an issue with Tuitt at halftime, telling him, if I knew you was going to, suck this bad, I wouldn't have drafted you. And Tuitt got really upset about it. And the Dolphins were put in a position, are we going to keep Tuitt or are we going to keep Flores? That's something that Mike Singletary, just for an example, struggled with dealing with the quarterback. And that's a very important relationship. During this time where Flores is going to be able to hopefully shine in this position, part of it might just be maturity, that he'll learn how to handle quarterbacks a little bit better. Because I love his intensity. I like that. That's what I want to see. But sometimes you kind of got to treat a lot of these modern day quarterbacks with kids' gloves. So, he'll have a chance to learn, and Tomlin can be an influence on him there as well. So, yeah, but if he's around more than 2 or 3 years, it'd shock me.
I actually think Mike Tomlin will be a calming influence. Tony, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to, just an aside, I just think it's funny that Belichick's from the Parcells tree and Flores is from the Belichick tree, because that's all three of them have that kind of relationship attitude towards quarterbacks. You hear like Phil Simms talk about Parcells, and of course Belichick he didn't even let Brady really have a huge say. So it's just, I guess it's funny, all the defensive guys and their attitude towards quarterbacks. You suck, get out of here.
What did we have in the 70s with Terry Bradshaw and Chuck Noll? I mean, they were not best of friends. There weren't fruitcakes coming to the house during Christmas in the 90s and the 2000s. They just weren't buddies, but there was some respect there too. And Bradshaw eventually did call his own plays, but it took Bradshaw a long time to become the man when you're drafted in 1970. And he doesn't really become he wasn't even the starter at the beginning of 1974.
Right.
So there was a quarterback carousel there too. And that's how Chuck Noll operated. And he was getting the best out of everybody. Terry Bradshaw would be Mitch Trubisky or Ryan Tannehill in 2020 too. He really would. He'd be a guy that would have to hook onto another team. Not saying, he's a Hall of Famer, he's great, but he struggled out of the gate, and we don't give quarterbacks that much time anymore. And that's just the fact of the matter. So we're going to go ahead and talk about what Kevin Colbert had to say, but I want to bring up something that Mark Chess mentioned right here, because I mentioned the Xavier Howard thing. He said Stephon Gilmore, he's a free agent, by the way, cornerback, loves Flores, could bring him in. So does Dante Hightower. And then Mark mentioned that, well, you know what? he ghosted us before in free agency, but there's always second chances, and there's always different ways to look at things. So whatever's best for this team, they are going to go ahead and do. So it's really funny to say that, you know, you have an opportunity. Not a lot of people knew. I didn't even really think about it until Shannon said it, how much of a personnel guy he was. So if you've got a scout on your coaching staff, and if you're a personnel guy, that's exactly what you are, then that really helps as well. So I love it. I love that they brought him in for a number of reasons, and this could be a great place for him. And I believe he's 40 years old. Is that it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this is the place where he can get it together. He's going to have support from the owner. He's going to have support from the head coach. He's going to have support from the fans. And the other thing he's going to have is, I don't think R2 is going to go and pay him to tank some games. Allegedly.
No.
Let me say that again. Allegedly.
Right.
So, all right. Let's talk about Kevin Colbert talking with the media today. What did you call him? Was it Shannon who called him a chatty Cathy? Made me laugh.
Yeah.
Was that you, Shannon, or was that Tony?
Yeah.
Chatty.
That's me.
All right. One of the first things that he talked about today was the Steelers' approach to free agency. And once again, I want to give credit to Dave Schofield for putting this great article on BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all your Pittsburgh Steelers needs. Check it out if you like to read about the Steelers. If you love to listen about the Steelers, that's why you're here 3 times a day with original shows. I just wanted to throw that in real quick. So GM Kevin Colbert said that the Steelers will begin their meeting evaluating free agents starting 2/22, which is tomorrow. And it's going to last the rest of the week. No decisions on any free agents, even their own, until those meetings conclude. So if that's going to last the rest of the week, man, they're going to be talking about who to bring in. And now you've got a guy like Flores in the room. It's like, hey, I could give a call to this guy. You know, just like John Mitchell gave a call to Tyson Alualu after he left, you know, and said, hey, do you really want to leave? You know, so that's one of those things that helps. But how do you see these meetings going? Let me start out with Shannon on this one.
They're going to, I guess it's good they've got Flores in there now, and they can go over. Colbert was talking about today that how he's viewing the strengths and weaknesses of this draft class. And we've talked about how Steelers are going to have to take an honest assessment of where their strengths and weaknesses are on the roster. A guy like Juju Smith-Schuster, is he going to be worth what it's going to cost to, sign him? Or is it better to go outside the organization, which Steelers like to, re-sign their own guys? But they have to try, because, the draft's unpredictable. So they don't know if the guys that they're really wanting is going to fall, in the order they want them to fall, and they get a shot at them. So it's always a gamble. But we've said before, I think it's going to be an interior offensive lineman, or it could be a tackle, and or a cornerback. And they'll probably discuss, what they're willing to spend at each position, and then start looking at some of the fringe guys that they might could sign. I have an article coming out tomorrow about one of those guys, Cordell Patterson, who played with the Atlanta Falcons, and he's kind of a poor man's Deebo Samuel, in that he could fill your wide receiver 3, running back 3, and kick return roles. So that's good value. Right now, the Steelers, with their draft capital and their salary cap, they're looking for value.
I can't wait to read that article, Shannon. And the reason why, Cordero is one of those guys that he was drafted in that 2013 draft. Not one of the best drafts. The first round of that draft was not great whatsoever. Le'Veon Bell was in the second round. The Steelers, that was one of the last horrible picks Not saying that Artie Burns was a great pick. I'm just saying like the last horrible pick was Jarvis Jones back in 13, almost 10 drafts ago. And Cordero took a long time. He floated around. He was drafted by the Vikings. Then he ended up with the Patriots. I believe he's on the Bears. And then he ended up in Atlanta. And in Atlanta, he just had this amazing season. Doing that and that Debo Samuel thing, that is a great reference there, Shannon, as well, because that's what a guy like this can do. And you could put him next to your feature running back, which, they considered Mike Davis the feature running back last year, but putting him next to a guy like Najee Harris would be absolutely amazing. And so, but not many guys. We talked about Bradshaw taking a long time to stick earlier in the show. Cordero took almost 8 seasons, but he's here. He's had his moment. And what's the bottom line to it? The bottom line is an organization found out how to use this guy the right way. So when you figure out how to use the guy the right way, you're good. Shannon.
Just one quick point is, it took him a long time because he wasn't, even in college, he wasn't a natural receiver or a natural running back, but he was really pretty good at both because he was a tremendous athlete. But he was always making Pro Bowls and all pro teams as a kick returner. And he's tied for the all-time record with 8 kick return touchdowns. So you bring a guy like that in, and he could possibly open up 1 or 2 more positions, which is always something that any rebuilding team would, can add more talent, young talent. And then he's also being a 9-year veteran. He could be a real influence in that young receiving room, which will probably get even younger if the Steelers pick a mid-round guy to, hopefully with some deep speed. So it could be a good signing all the way around.
Tony, so let me ask you this. What comes first? Your own or the guys you're bringing in on the outside? Or does that intermingle?
I think it intermingles. Like if you look at the secondary, for example, I mean, you have Keller Witherspoon who came on big time last year. He's a free agent. Do you want to invest in him? Do you want to take a chance on him and invest in him as your future at cornerback? You know how much they love Cam Sutton, his versatility. He can play on the outside. He can play in the slot. He can play safety. So they have plans for him. As far as the other cornerback position, I mean, do you want to go out? Do you want to bring back Joe Hayden, or do you want to go bigger and bring in somebody like a Stefan Gilmore, who's going to cost more than Joe Hayden, but they're not that as far as age and ability. I mean, obviously, Gilmore he was a former defensive player of the year, right? So there's a difference there, but not is it much of a difference? And how do they feel about James Pierre? I mean, he kind of lost his job at the end of last year. Are they confident in his development? So to me, I think that if you have to decide on your own guys first. You have to decide on how you feel about Witherspoon, how you feel about Hayden, how you feel about James Pierre, who's not a free agent, but do you want to move forward with him, in your secondary before you can just make a big decision on one of these free agents. I saw a bunch of free agents last week when I looked over the list. There's some intriguing names, including Gilmore, but you have to figure out what you want to do at home first. And that's the same thing goes, but maybe along the offensive line when you're talking about, Shoots and I know a lot of people are down on him, but Trey Turner, is he a free agent? Yeah. He's solid, but he's solid. So do you want to bring him back, or do you want to upgrade in that area, which they probably could upgrade at a decent price. So I think you have to make decisions on your own guys first before you can make a huge splash. And I'm confident that they'll be able to hash through that when they have their meeting. What did he say, next week? So yeah, I'm looking forward to this free agent period more than I have in a very long. I think we all are, because there's so much more to work with now than they've had, and really since the social media age.
Absolutely. Let's talk about free agents. Free agents, something that he talked about next, he being Kevin Colbert, on the Steelers salary cap situation. And he says, and I quote, "I think we can comfortably say that we will have more salary cap room this year than we've had. I can't even remember when we've had any excess room, but we're anticipating having more room going into this process. So that means that they got that extra Christmas bonus that they did not expect, fellas. And they're looking at using it. I know when we come into more money at the house here, my wife has a list of 6 or 7 things right off the bat that, oh, we should do this, do this, do this. I'm like, it's not that much, but they do have close to 50. They're going to have close between 40 and 50 million there, give or take a few, and other moves are going to be made. So just quickly, Tony, do you think that they're going to be players on the free agency market?
Oh, I think so. I mean, I don't look for them to make, go nuts. That's not the Steelers' approach to things. I look for them to be aggressive because they have more money to be aggressive, and they've kind of changed their ways in the last few years as far as the moves that they make that they would have never made in the past. Devin Bush, Minka, but I look for them to be also pragmatic with their approach. They're gonna identify guys that they're gonna talk to certain players, and they're gonna make reasonable offers, and if it's not enough, then they might walk away. So, but I do look for them to be more aggressive than they have been in the past. How could they not be? They have so much more to play with.
Shannon.
Yeah, they one of the concerning things is somebody just said, how much is Minka going to cost? Because they'd like to extend him before they get in a position where they're in a bidding war. But the only problem is Flores coached him, and I don't know if he was part of the problem in Miami. I don't know how Minka feels about him. So will this help with how much it's going to cost to get Minka signed, or will it make it worse? That's something they're going to have to take a look at. But I think they'll try to look at like we've talked about, a guy like J.C. Jackson, a cornerback, because guys like him don't usually hit the free agent market very often, and they have struggled some to identify talent. Now that could be, at quarterback, that could be totally different now with Austin and Flores, but I do think they'll make a run at one of the more established cornerbacks in this free agent class.
That would be welcome to a lot of people. Now let's talk about this draft class. Kevin Colbert listed the 2022 draft class strengths and weaknesses. Now, earlier on, it concerned our very own BTSC's Andrew Wilbar, one of our draft experts here. We're blessed with a few draft experts here, and Andrew was a little concerned with this list because of some guys that were on one position that they did not mention. So wide receiver, offensive tackle, corner, outside linebacker are deep positions and that is according to Colbert, while guard, center, defensive tackles were not so deep. And yeah, he did not mention inside linebackers whatsoever, and we know that is a concern for the Steelers again. So Shannon, when you look at this here, talking about who's a strength, who's a weakness, what position, does that kind of play their hand a little bit of that they're going to have to go with one of those guys on the weak list a little higher if they want one of those guys because they're not going to be available in other rounds?
Oh, that'll definitely influence it, and it'll influence how they look at free agency as well. I didn't agree with Colbert about the offensive tackle position because if you review some of the prospects at offensive tackle, their future NFL position may be at guard. So that's how I'm looking at it. So I feel like that the guard position is stronger than maybe he's initially thinks, and the offensive tackle is better than some years, but it's not all that strong. Pretty much everything else I agreed with. You got the kid out of Cincinnati, Darren Beavers, who is a pure buck linebacker. And if Flores can bring Bush's potential out and have him back playing like he did as a rookie, that would be a great guy to match him up with and put on the interior there. So that's going to the way Colbert looks at it, and the way the rest of the Steelers brass look at it, is going to influence those decisions.
Wow, an inside linebacker combo of Bush and Beavers. How awesome would that be?
I didn't think of that one.
You know, sometimes you just have to. And hey, the podcast producer will talk to me later about that one, I'm sure. I might have to take his call. So
we can name we could have a new award. Nah, I can't say it.
Don't. But I like what you're thinking.
The Dundies. Anyway, go ahead.
All right, Tony. Quickly, your thought on that as well, on the strengths and weaknesses of the draft class, according to Kevin.
Well, yeah, I think it could definitely influence what they do in free agency and in the draft. And we saw it a few years ago. There were only a couple of bona fide first round inside linebackers, and they had to move up to get Devin Bush. And in the year before, there were 3 of them, and they missed out on all 3 of them, and they drafted Terrell Edmonds. So it definitely could affect what they do. I mean, if they really like somebody in a class that's considered or a position that's considered weaker, they might have to move up. They might have to figure, okay, we're not going to be able to get this player or address this position, so we're going to have to do it in free agency. So yeah, it's definitely going to influence it. Although when it comes to Kevin Colbert and draft talk, I never know what to believe with him, because he plays he's got a great poker face, and every year he always says, you might want to trade back, and he never ever does. So and he only traded up that one time, so, or at least one time in modern history. So yeah, I think it could definitely influence him, and him. But I think it's interesting that he would throw all these different. He would name the stronger units and the weaker units. I wonder if that's a little bit gamesmanship on his part.
There's always the potential for gamesmanship, definitely. You mentioned Bush, and that year you both mentioned Bush and Devin Lloyd. Were they were the top? Is it Lloyd? The kid in Tampa.
Devin White.
Is it Devin White? Why'd I say Lloyd? Okay, so I should know
year.
that. Yeah. So Devin White and Devin Bush, and then the drop off was Mack Wilson, which they thought, he could be a possible second and third rounder. He didn't go until the 5th. Now, there might have been an inside linebacker that went in between there, but yeah, they were few and far between. So Shannon, you're saying that's what it is like this year. So
what, for inside linebacker?
Yeah.
No, I think that they have. It's a pretty good class of inside linebackers. We talked about Chad Muma, and but I'm just saying that
you love
if they're counting on Bush rebounding, then Beavers might be a good combo to put with him.
You know what? Okay, you know what? Now I know what I did. Devin Lloyd is the kid out of Georgia, right?
Utah.
That out of Utah. So, and he's considered, he could go top 10, or he could fall close to 20. And that's an interesting situation there as well. But we'll talk about that more down the line. So that's where I got the name Devin Lloyd stuck in my head. So here's another one that this is no shock to anybody, especially if you've been listening to Dave Schofield for the last, 3 or 4 months. Colbert said the Steelers expect to receive one additional compensatory pick sometime in early March. So, that's something we've been talking about here for a while. Don't expect to. One of the mock drafters expected them to get to. Now that's definitely not going to happen. So what you're really looking at here is probably a number 4, a second, fourth, because of Bud Dupree's playing time. When Bud Dupree, I was wondering why Dave was like, man, Bud Dupree needs to come back. You got to get him out of here. And now I absolutely realize what he was talking about. So that's really no surprise to any of us there. But the quarterback situation was the 5th thing. that Kevin Colbert talked about. And Colbert said repeatedly that he expects the team to tender Dwayne Haskins as previously reported. That gives the Steelers 2 quarterbacks right now with 2 spots up for grabs before camp. So to me, it seems like it's going to be an existing player, whether it be a trade or a free agent signing, and a draft choice, which it very well could be a number one draft choice, or it could be a number 6. That's a possibility when you're looking at a quarterback here, to be a camp body, and then you decide where you want to go from there. But I'm going to start with Shannon here. Does it make sense to keep Dwayne Haskins and Mason Rudolph right now, because you don't have many to compete for the position?
Yeah, they're conceivably the only 2 guys. Rudolph signed and Haskins probably will be. But yeah, you got to have some talent there. And, we've all talked about the free agent route, Mariota, Trubisky, something like that. It's all going to come down to how the Steelers views this quarterback class. If they think there's a guy there they consider special, they'll have to do what they have to do to get him. Maybe it'll be a guy that even falls into the second round. But I just always feel like if a quarterback makes it to the 6th, 7th round, just try to get him as an undrafted free agent, because there's a reason he fell that far, and him having a successful career is like Tom Brady, and I don't know anybody else. So, yeah, they're either going to have to get that guy early, but I definitely think they're going to try to bring in a free agent. Now, if there's a guy they want, bad enough, they'll try to draft him, but that's going to be up to them, and that's a big decision.
Tony.
I mean, obviously he had to kind of, endorse Mason Rudolph a little bit, because he is under contract, and nobody else seems to be doing that for him lately. And, Dwayne Haskins, it makes perfect sense if you can bring him back at tender him. It's not going to cost you a lot. He's certainly a tremendous, or at least was considered a tremendous talent a few years ago. He was a high draft pick. So, they talked glowingly about him last summer, at least Big Ben did. So, you get those 2 guys in here, and then, he mentioned bringing 4 arms to camp. Well, that could be a draft pick and a veteran. So, people are going nuts with, him saying if the season started today, he'd be the Steelers quarterback, meaning Mason Rudolph. That didn't mean anything. It just means that, there's still time to find a couple more guys, a veteran and a draft pick. So I look for them, like Shannon said, I look for them to have Mason, Dwayne Haskins, a draft pick, and maybe a veteran. Now, what kind of veteran that is, that might, again, like Shannon said, it might be determined by how they feel about the draft class. If they consider it to be one that they can't really find a future starter, then maybe they go with a more high-end veteran. But if they think they can find somebody in this class, even if it's not in the first round, maybe they go out and they get somebody that you're not that crazy about as a veteran, like a Ryan Fitzpatrick or somebody like that.
Mm-hmm.
Can we add to that process from the outside, said Colbert? Yes. And I quote, we always look at unrestricted groups, potential cuts down the road. We know we're going to add to the position. So, you know what? Don't worry about Rudolph and Haskins, because they're the guys here right now. And you got to have 4, like Tony said. So those are the 2. Who are the next 2? That's might be your starter, the next 2, if they could make a splash. And I kind of think my gut's saying that's what they want. About the quarterbacks in the 2022 draft class, GM Kevin Colbert said there is good quality available, probably not in the same numbers as in recent years, but that he's excited about that part of the process. And we have talked about this ad nauseum, and we're going to continue to do that this might, but that almost tells me, fellas, and we'll do this rapid fire just real quick. Does that kind of tell you guys that, they might not be really looking at taking a quarterback in the first round like a lot of people on the national media think they're going to do in every single mock draft. Tony?
Yeah, because I don't think there's going to be somebody there worth the value at 20, but because I think Willis and Pickett for starters are both going to be gone.
Shannon?
Yeah, the only thing concerns me is they spent so much time in North Carolina looking at Hal and also at Ritter, who will possibly be there, both of them in the second. So that's going to be interesting.
But that's doing their jobs. You know,
You're
supposed to spend a lot of time scouting those guys. And they also, think about this, they also had the ability to see Sam Howell come to Pittsburgh and play at Heinz Field as a member of the ACC's North Carolina Tar Heels. Let's talk about Stefan Tuitt. Kevin Colbert on Tuitt's availability, been in contact with Stefan, open to continuing to help him continue to evaluate that position and his availability to us. So we have guessed like crazy about this. Colbert also said that he's spoken with him and they are open to welcoming him back in 2022. It sounds like that's going to happen, and it just seems like it's up to his knee and his state of mind from what a lot of people are guessing at here. So, Tony, your thoughts on Stefan Tuitt?
Yeah, it sounds to me like they're open to bringing him back. It's just a matter of Tuitt wanting to come back, and we don't know his mindset because we haven't heard from him since everything before last season with his brother and everything. So I don't know what his mindset is, but it sounds like the Steelers are open to having him back, and why not? He's a tremendous talent, so why not?
Of course, I think we've been guessing on what his problem is and don't know what his problem is because it hasn't been told. So, Shannon, what is your gut telling you? Stefan Tuitt, back or not?
Based on what Colbert said, I think he kind of confirmed it's help him. How would he have to help him with his knee? I think it's obviously something to do with the tragedy. And, until we hear from Tuitt, we just don't know.
So let's talk about the offensive line now. And the offensive line is very important to this team, something that definitely needs to be upgraded. And they talked about the middle of the line, and it's Kendrick Green was a topic of conversation here. And I quote, Kendrick did a lot of good things for us. And when he hurt the calf, he wasn't benched for inefficient play. He was benched because he was hurt. We know that Kendrick can play guard. We know he can play center. Is it our best option? See where we go in the next 2 months. I like that, fellas. Let me just continue with this. Colbert also said that one of his regrets from the 2020 offseason was not adding another affordable veteran to the offensive line mix to ease the growth of that group. I got to tell you, that speaks volumes to me. Does that to you, Shannon?
Oh, yes. They thought that Banner would be healthy by the start of the season and he would take over at right tackle. And I believe they thought that Green would progress through the year. But then I think that the calf was part of the reason. I think mental paralysis was the other because he kind of shut down that way. But I think Colbert was really being honest there that he should have brought in another established guy to help that line.
Tony, when you say that there's a regret about something, that you have a regret about something, you're not likely to ignore that the next year. Are you, Tony?
Well, I mean, I've regretted many things in my life, and when I get a second opportunity, I try to rectify that. So I think what he's saying is, last year I wanted to bring somebody in. Maybe financially I couldn't. This year I have the resources to do it, and I'm gonna rectify that mistake from last year and somebody in to help with this young and very inexperienced line.
That tells me a lot that they are going to follow that Cincinnati Bengal way and bring some guys in. Now, I know a lot of people are talking about the line being the weakness in the Super Bowl for them, but that line helped that team out quite a bit. And I got to tell you, they did it with veterans. They did it with drafting some guys. They didn't go as high as I thought they were going to. They went to a different direction, and it worked for them. getting the playmaker at wide receiver. But man, they really need to protect Joe Burrow. The Steelers need to open up holes for Najee Harris and protect the next signal caller. So it's going to be really interesting. I am going to bring up my man Andrew Wilbar here. By the way, check out his new show with Jeremy Betts. And it just episode 2 came out today. And this is my plan too, without number 3. I agree with this 100%. Sign Teron Armstead from the New Orleans Saints. Draft Lacita Smith. I'm drafting him in the second round on every single one of my mock simulator drafts. Tony, it's time to go back to the mock simulators. Remember we were doing that last year. So we got to do that.
Yeah,
and so there's been a lot of Lacita Smith that I've been drafting, and sign Mason Cole center. And I don't know enough about Cole. So with that being said, that I like Andrew's plan, and that's why he's kicking off the week on Mondays with Jeremy. Good job, Andrew. Tony, you like that plan?
Oh, I feel that number 1. I think Armstead is he's the free agent list that I saw. He's right up there, so he's the number 1 tackle on the free agent board. So if you can get him at you're not going to get him at a reasonable price. Let's not kid ourselves. But if you can find a way to get him and make that work, then I think that'll go a long way. And first of all, making everybody happy that they're addressing the offensive line, because I don't think too many people were happy about that last year. And number 2, actually improving the line. So yeah, I think that'd be a great move. As far as the other guys, I'm not deep enough into the draft yet at this point to know about those guys. And Mason Cole, I'm not sure about him either.
Shannon, let's get a little crazy here. With this plan that Andrew Wilbar brings out, if the Steelers could get Ben Roethlisberger to come back at a veteran minimum to play quarterback, do you think he would if you brought in a guy like Armstead and draft Lacita Smith?
No, I think he's done. He's made his decision. Brady, there's more chance of Brady coming back than there is Ben. But I love
would he be effective, Shannon?
That's tough to say, because it's going to take time for that to develop, even if they do this plan. And again, he's going to be even more immobile. And he was jumpy in the pocket last year. And I don't see him, now that he's actually retired and where his mind's at, I don't see it. I think it would be a very bad decision for him to come back.
All right. So Kevin Colbert also talked about general managers, hiring general managers, how he's not going to retire. He's not going to say the retire word, because he may be back with the organization in some kind of capacity as well to help out. He didn't say other organizations. He said back with this organization. So that is something that you can see him in there as well. We're not going to really discuss that, because that's right now that doesn't affect this season as much. It will affect after he's gone, though, when you have a general manager making decisions in season and after the draft. But for right now, we're going to put that one aside, and we're going to finish up with something that's been on everybody's mind as well. Another guy that kind of took a step back last year, and it's Devin Bush Jr. And we talked about him earlier. Colbert said that they had not decided if the Steelers are going to pick up Devin Bush's 5th-year option, but he mentioned the ACL recovery impacting him in 2021. And I quote, "I think Devin Bush will be a better player in 2022. Tony Defeo, let me ask you about that. Colbert's final season, with Devin Bush here, going into his 5th year, what kind of gamble do you make on Devin Bush, and what's your gut saying?
My gut says, and I think it was a kind of a community decision to be as aggressive as they were to go up and get him. So I think they invested so much in him in 2019. I think they almost feel obligated to pick up his 5th-year option. So I think they're gonna pick it up.
Shannon, would it be foolish to not bring him back at this point being the fact that an injury could have been a big part of the reason last year, or was that foreshadowing of problems in the future?
No way I would sign him to the extension. I've said before, I based on what I saw yesterday or last season, he become contact adverse. And as a middle linebacker, you got to want to put a hat on somebody. You got to fire up in there. I mean, towards the end of the year, his knee had healed and he was moving well. And GB would point it out in different breakdowns that he was moving, but he would try to go around the blockers because, yes, the defensive line didn't do a good job of keeping them clean. But eventually you got to take on a blocker, disengage, and make a tackle. And I can't even remember him doing that 10 times last year. If he made a tackle, it was because he just run the guy down or caught him. He did not want to engage and take on blockers. And that concerns me greatly. So I have no faith in him moving forward. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I said that Flores could be a great hire, especially for Bush. If he can bring that back out of him and get him a good buck linebacker next to him, the defense could improve a lot, especially if Tuitt and Lulu come back and the defensive line improves. But as far as giving him that fifth-year option, I couldn't do it right now.
Tony, what are you doing?
I haven't really been that impressed with him, even his first 2 years before he got hurt. So, like, as far as what they invested in him and the impact that they expected him to make, I mean, I realized Ryan Shazier struggled a bit early on, but he was impactful. Even like right away, his biggest problem early in his career were injuries. You saw how impactful he was in that playoff game against the Bengals. So I haven't seen that from Bush yet. So I'm not sure if he has the size and even the athleticism to cover tight ends like they were hoping he would. So I would say no at this point.
I'm not saying no, and I'll take the criticism for it, but I'm waiting to see. I really don't want to waste next year by making him a lame duck this year but one thing that you can do, though, you definitely can do, is they didn't offer the 50-year option to Terrell Edmonds, and I think they're bringing him back. I think that's a guy that they do bring back. So, there's that possibility too, that you give him a walk year and see what he has. And then you kind of gamble on that. Shannon?
Yeah, I mean, it can, if the Steelers bring back Edmonds, I think he's a great match and pairing with Fitzpatrick. And I think he's really good in tight end coverage. But this way you can at least control the price more than, say, if you do offer, and then he's got to be paid within the top 5 of the position. So it would give the Steelers more flexibility. Now, will these guys be offended, and will they decide to go elsewhere because the Steelers didn't give them, extend them? So there's your gamble.
All right, fellas. Hey, this was a spirited conversation. It was a lot of fun. I get it. I love it. Thank you so much. Everybody in the live chat, you have been fantastic as well. It's great to see all of you in here. And even if you're not here right now and you're driving down the road or you're working and you're checking us out later on, thank you so much. We cannot do these shows without each and every one of you. You're all the best, and you make us do what we do here too. So we strive to be better because of your fan loyalty. So thank you so much. So let me tell you this, so many great shows to check out. Check out the live mic tomorrow morning, audio only. Check out Jeffrey Benedict, audio only. Check out, and that's tomorrow as well. Don't be afraid to check out the Scobro shows. They'll be back here on YouTube and on audio as well, and other great shows throughout the week. Also, don't forget about Let's Ride that was on this morning, and the Steelers Draft Fix as well. Jeff Hartman does Let's Ride. Andrew Wilbar, Jeremy Betts, they do the Draft Fix, and they talked about quarterbacks today. So if you want to hear more about the Steelers and the quarterback class of 2022, that's a good thing to check out as well. we've got 3 things that we need you to do here. And Tony, put up the fingers. 1, be safe. We can't do this without you. 2, be true to yourself. You have nobody to impress here. We're all family. You be you. And 3, always be behind the steel curtain. For Shannon White and Tony Defeo. Little premature enthusiasm there, Shannon. Let me try this again. For Shannon White and Tony Defeo, my name is Bryan Anthony Davis. And just when you think you've got all the answers,
we keep changing the questions.
Got another one, Shannon? All right. We'll see you next week. Keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the hypocycloids.